There's a reason people underestimate you, why they talk over you, test your patience, push your limits, and question your worth. It's not because you're weak. It's because you're harmless. You reveal your cards too early. You care too openly. You try to be liked before you're feared. But in a Machiavellian world, being liked without being feared is the same as being forgotten. The world doesn't fear kindness. It fears unpredictability. You were taught your whole life to be a good person. Smile more. Be kind. Be open. Be easy to approach. But here's the truth. People don't respect good people. They use them. Because what's visible is predictable. And what's predictable can be controlled. Machiavelli knew this. He didn't write to comfort. He wrote to warn. A prince who isn't feared will always be exposed. That doesn't mean you should turn violent. It means you must turn unreadable. Because in a room full of noise, the one who stays silent becomes the one everyone watches. Not because they expect entertainment, but because they sense something they can't name. That's the goal, to be noticed not for attention, but for caution. When you're not a threat, you're a tool. Think about it. How many times were you ignored until you finally walked away? How many came back only after your silence? How many respected your boundaries only when you enforced them with distance? Because you were playing the good game, and they were playing the power game. They knew you'd explain, forgive, stay, and apologize first. And once someone knows you won't escalate, they escalate first, and they win. Machiavelli saw it in politics. You see it in your relationships, your work, your home. People don't test the dangerous ones. They test the emotional ones because they know your empathy will stop you before your pride does. But when you become a quiet threat, they hesitate before speaking. They second-guess their tone. They prepare their words. They hold their disrespect. Why? Because you might not bark, but you might bite. That's the power of the unspoken. They expect you to react. That's how they measure control. Can they make you flinch? Can they make you explain? Can they make you chase? Can they make you soften? Every time you do, they mark you safe. Every time you don't, they mark you dangerous. And dangerous doesn't mean unstable. It means unreadable. Machiavelli knew that once people can predict your emotions, they'll build your future around their needs, not yours. But when they can't, they wait, they watch, they obey. You've spent your whole life trying to be loved first. Now try being quietly feared. Not through threats, not through shouting, but through silence, unpredictability, and refusal to bleed on command. Because the man who walks in smiling is forgettable, but the man who walks in without needing to speak, he becomes presence, and presence outlives voice. Machiavelli never picked up a sword unless he had already won with perception, because in the real world, it's not about what you are, it's about what they believe you're capable of. You don't need to be dangerous. You just need to be perceived as dangerous. And how do you do that? Without words. You control your visibility. You control your energy. You control the silence. Because in every room, one rule never fails. They fear what they don't understand, and they respect what they fear. Step 1. Never show your whole hand. The loud ones expose everything. Their ambitions, their insecurities, their triggers, their plans. They talk, they prove, they flex. And the more they reveal, the easier they are to defeat. But Machiavelli never taught exposure. He taught mystery. Because if they can read you, they can replace you. If they can't, they prepare for you. So you say less, you react slower. You keep your intentions covered in fog, not to confuse, but to control how you're perceived. Because in a world obsessed with being seen, the one they can't define becomes the one they can't stop thinking about. Step 2, don't defend, don't explain. Nothing kills the illusion of power faster than defensiveness. When someone criticizes you and you explain, you prove them right. When they call you distant and you justify your silence, you show you care more than they thought. Every explanation says one thing: you still give emotional access. But Machiavelli wouldn't explain. He'd stare, nod, smile, and say, "Noted." That's how you become a threat. You hear everything and return nothing. Step 3, send mixed signals on purpose. A threat doesn't need aggression. It needs unpredictability. People don't fear what they understand. They fear what contradicts itself. Machiavelli would praise an ally today and replace him tomorrow. Smile in conversation and disappear by next week. Offer kindness, then vanish without reason. Why? Because nothing creates more psychological control than emotional instability. And instability makes people cautious. You don't have to be cruel, just unpredictable enough that no one wants to test the version of you they haven't met yet. That's what modern people call mystery. Machiavelli called it illusion. Step 4. Remain calm when others lose control. That's the highest form of intimidation. Self-control in chaos. When people gossip, stay silent. When they yell, blink slowly. When they panic, speak softly. When they insult, smile slightly. You send one message, you can't shake me. And if you can't shake me, you can't move me. And if you can't move me, then fear what I might choose to move next. That stillness, that refusal to react, turns you from a participant into a presence they orbit. Machiavelli preferred one cold sentence at the end of a conflict over 100 emotional explanations during it. Because the fewer words you use, the heavier they land. And when people can't predict your words, they begin adjusting their behavior before you speak. That's not communication. That's command. When people hear threat, they imagine violence. When they hear dominance, they imagine control. But Machiavelli knew real power was neither. He wasn't obsessed with control through force, but control through presence. Because the most feared person in any room is the one who does the least and is still noticed the most. It's safer to be feared than loved if you can't be both. Not because fear makes you cruel, but because fear makes others respect your silence. You don't need to strike. You just need to make them believe you might. And that belief is stronger than any argument you could ever give. The unthreatening are always disrespected. Let's talk psychology. When someone doesn't fear losing you, they waste your time, talk over you, take more than they give, and expect you to explain yourself. Because your presence has no weight. You're safe, predictable, kind, and accommodating. And in a Machiavellian world, those aren't virtues. They're weaknesses begging to be tested. So what does a threat look like? Not weapons, not shouting, not revenge. A threat is silence after disrespect, calm in the face of gossip, unpredictability without emotion, disappearing from a room and making people feel it. That's fear. And fear is leverage. You're not just a person. You're a consequence. Once people experience your detachment, your distance, your refusal to chase, they start linking your silence with loss. When you stop replying, they think. When you say less, they overanalyze. When you vanish, they feel it. Your absence becomes a mirror, not because you punish them, but because they realize, without your validation, they can't measure themselves anymore. That's psychological warfare. Machiavelli didn't need armies to inspire fear. He needed silence, distance, and unpredictability. Because when people can't read your next move, they either retreat or earn your favor again. And both outcomes serve you. Build the wolf, kill the dog. There's a reason videos titled "Kill the Dog in You" go viral, because everyone knows the sting of being the emotional dog, loyal when betrayed, friendly when mocked, obedient when ignored. Everyone wants to be the wolf, but they miss the point. The wolf doesn't bark, he watches. And when he moves, no one is ready. That's who you must become. You don't bark. You don't explain. You don't beg. You calculate. You withhold. You let others feel the chill of your presence without ever raising your voice. The unforgettable are often quiet. Loud people are remembered for a moment. The silent are remembered in memory. After you leave a room, people replay what they couldn't define. Why didn't he speak? Was he testing us? What did that silence mean? They can't move on because you never gave them closure. And when they can't close the file, they keep rereading it. That's how threats are born, not from action, but from potential. You don't have to say a word to dominate a room, because most power isn't spoken. It's signaled through posture, presence, and by what you don't do while everyone else scrambles to be seen. Machiavelli wouldn't bark orders. He'd observe, let others reveal themselves, and then, without raising his voice, make them fear the space between his words. Want to be a threat? Start with daily habits that make people question your reach. Habit 1. Never be the first to react. When someone tries to bait or trigger you, wait. Everyone else rushes to respond, to defend, to get the last word. Not you. You blink. You pause. You let their energy bounce off your stillness. The first reactor is always seen as weaker. The one who waits is the one whose move everyone anticipates. Machiavelli would rather seem not to have heard than respond before the sentence is finished, because the pause is not hesitation, it's calculation. People fear the calculated more than the confrontational. Habit 2. Speak slower, say less, leave sooner. It sounds simple, but it rewires perception. Speaking slowly signals control. Saying less creates value. Leaving early builds mystery. Most people speak to be understood. Power doesn't seek understanding. It seeks interpretation. You want people asking, what did he mean? Was that agreement or a warning? Why did he leave when the mood shifted? Machiavelli made people nervous without raising his voice because he never stuck around long enough to be fully known. What can't be defined becomes feared. Habit 3. Withdraw to reinforce presence. The most dominant people aren't always present, but when they are, everyone feels it, because they don't over-appear. Leave social spaces, chats, arguments, even meetings before your presence becomes normalized. The dog is always there. The wolf appears and vanishes. When the wolf is gone, people ask where he went. Scarcity is how Machiavelli trained power. Be the one whose absence is noticed, not the one everyone expects to stay. Habit 4. Never over-explain your moves. Explanations may make sense to you. You want to be clear, honest, understood, but Machiavelli knew every explanation subtracts power. You said no, say no. You changed your mind, let it remain changed. You walked away, stay away. No justification. The wolf doesn't justify his steps. He takes them, and the world adjusts. No emotional wrapping. No justifying your boundaries. Once you begin explaining, you begin defending. Once you begin defending, you stop commanding. You become negotiable, and a threat never negotiates. Habitually, they maintain emotional neutrality in social games. Notice how people try to test your center. They bait you with provocation to see if you'll correct them. Joke about your silence to draw you out, flirt, prod, guilt trip. All attempts to crack that unreadable energy because they're afraid of it. Let them assume whatever they like. Smile, observe, withdraw. The more they try to read you, the more power you accumulate. Machiavelli didn't only perform power, he practiced rituals of restraint. Small movements of control, a daily posture that whispered, "You don't know what I'm capable of, and you never will, but cross me and you may find out." There's a thin line between mystery and being ignored, between silence that commands presence and silence that dissolves into irrelevance. Machiavelli's genius wasn't choosing fear over respect. It was balancing both so that when you said nothing, your name still echoed in the room. Fear without respect breeds resistance. People obey on the surface and plot below, comply publicly and sabotage privately. That's short-term power. It keeps people in line for a moment, but makes them dream of your fall. Machiavelli avoided that. He didn't only command silence. He earned controlled admiration. Not love, not likability, reverence. The kind that thinks he could destroy me, but he hasn't. Yet respect without fear invites entitlement. If people only respect you, they'll praise you, trust you, then ask for more than they give. They'll talk over you and expect your kindness as a guarantee. You become liked, not watched. And when people stop watching, they underestimate your reach. The remedy, tension. The most powerful move through the world with tension behind them. Not drama, but a tautness that says you're kind, but not to be tested. Calm, but not to be played. Silent, but not asleep. That tension keeps others on edge in the right way, because they can't calculate how much of what you show is real. Once they start measuring your depth, they stop trying to control you. How to build that tension? Machiavelli's method: be consistent in control, inconsistent in warmth. Always composed, but not always inviting. Sometimes observant, sometimes unreadable. Occasionally amused, never angry, never passive. Collected, but not fully available. That unpredictability keeps people off balance. Deliver one precise moment, then vanish. Speak rarely but surgically. End an argument with a single line. Dissolve a fight with one sentence. Correct a mistake once and leave it be, then disappear. Let your exit leave questions. Don't repeat yourself. That single measured moment lingers longer than 1,000 explanations. That's lasting tension. Make them feel the weight of losing you without overt threats of leaving. Machiavelli never begged for attention or threatened departure, yet he trained others to sense the drop when he withdrew. Stop replying. Stop nodding. Become professionally distant. Leave the room early without explanation. No closure, only distance. And they will feel it because your presence had value they overlooked. Now they step lighter. Let praise arrive without your confirmation. When complimented, don't melt, deflect, or mirror. Nod, hold eye contact, maybe a small smirk, but do not validate their praise with submission. Accepting admiration without dependence tells people something terrifying. You already know your worth. Their praise was courtesy, not currency. That is how you walk the line. You let people respect your calmness, yet fear the mystery hidden beneath it. That tension, that's how Machiavelli would have ruled today. The loud ones attract attention. The quiet ones leave a legacy. Machiavelli never aimed to command people in the moment. He aimed to live inside their minds long after he left the room. Because true power isn't about dominance. It's about presence that lingers after your absence. And the most dangerous presence of all is the one that never explains itself. Men forget the death of a father faster than the loss of their inheritance. So ask yourself, what kind of man must you become to feel like an inheritance when you disappear? Let's build that version of you step by step. Obsession isn't born from availability. It's born from distance. People don't obsess over what they understand completely. They obsess over what felt close, but never fully theirs. That's how you become unforgettable. By being real enough to feel tangible, yet distant enough to feel untouchable. You give them a glance that lasts a moment, a word that cuts deeper than expected, a calmness that unsettles the unstable. Then you vanish. Your absence becomes a loop they can't close. Strategy 1. Never give them what they expect. Most people expose their entire character within minutes. They're too kind, too expressive, too available. You speak less, smile slower, and reveal nothing unnecessary. You create a contrast so sharp it forces them to adjust. Their tone, their posture, even their breathing shifts. Not because you demanded it, but because your presence changed the atmosphere. Now you've left a mark. Strategy 2. Let them project, then stay silent. They'll try to define you. He's intense. She's mysterious. They're hard to read. Let them. Once they start projecting, they start obsessing. They'll replay your silences, analyze your expressions, invent stories to explain the parts they can't reach. Don't correct them. Their imagination becomes your publicist, and confusion becomes your magnet. Strategy 3. Leave them mid-sentence. Emotionally or literally. Most people crave closure. Neat endings, clear exits, tidy explanations. You don't give them that. You end conversations slightly too soon. Disappear slightly too early. Wait slightly too long before replying. Because that incompleteness becomes a hook. They'll revisit the moment endlessly, trying to finish what you never did. That's how presence turns into obsession. Strategy 4. Guard your inner world like a kingdom. They ask what drives you. You say, focus. They ask if you're okay. You say, always adjusting. They ask what you want. You say, depends on the day. You offer clues, never confessions. Because once someone fully knows your why, they start plotting your how. But when your inner world feels like a fortress, they stop knocking and start watching. They wonder. They think of you long after you've forgotten them. Machiavelli's brilliance wasn't in being remembered as a great man. It was in being remembered as the man who could have been anything and chose when, how, and if. That if is the hook. That's what they can't forget. You've reached the final stage, where silence isn't a tactic, it's a default. Where you don't suppress what you feel, you control when and if it's worth revealing. Machiavelli's final form wasn't loud or ruthless. It was disciplined. Because true power isn't when people obey you out of fear, it's when they move differently, just in case you're watching. The unreadable man can never be cornered. Once they understand you, they begin to manage you. But once they realize they'll never truly know you, they surrender control. They give you space. Because now you've become unpredictable. And what's unpredictable becomes untouchable.